Good morning and welcome to this webinar. We are extremely pleased that you could join us this morning, and we are even more pleased that we are hosting our guest speaker from Standard Bank. I think it's important for us to just tell you why it is that we do these kinds of webinars and how this relationship with Standard Bank works. So from the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber, we have partners who are members of the chamber, and Standard Bank is one of them. But what we do as a philosophy and as a strategy is that we operate on what we call the quadruple helix model of collaboration, which is government, academia, business, as well as civil society, like to collaborate on everything that happens. But because of what has happened now in the last maybe 6 months in the world with the breakout of the COVID-19, we have also had to see how we adapt as a business, but also to assist our members and those who may not be members of the business chamber to be able to adapt and go with the times. So I'm extremely pleased this morning to introduce to you Mr. Lincoln Mali, who is the head of Group Card and Emerging Payments at Standard Bank. I'm going to say that again. Mr. Lincoln Mali is the head of Group Card and Emerging Payments at Standard Bank. To some people, there's no need to introduce him because he's rather a well-known personality. But to us, it's a moment of pride because he is a son of the soil. He comes from Port Elizabeth, where we are based, but he also is a citizen of the world as far as we are concerned. So I'd like to just maybe hand over to him to introduce himself a bit more. I do have his bio, but I feel like it would be much better and more interactive if he introduces himself and then take us straight through to the presentation. So welcome, and hope you'll stay with us and interact. At the end of the presentation, there will be an opportunity for Q&A, but if a question strikes you while he's speaking, feel free to send it on the group chat and we will be able to pick it up and then he will answer the questions at the end. Welcome again, and we're really delighted to have you, Lincoln. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Lokita, and thank you so much to everybody who joined. My name is Lincoln Mali. I am the head of Card and Emerging Payments at the Standard Bank Group. I'm also a husband to Zwa for the last 22 years and father to Amara, Liam, and Lihle, who are my kids. And it is wonderful to be with you in the Eastern Cape. I've been locked down here also for the last 3 months. But the wonders of technology is that I'm able to do my work out here, stuck on a farm in East London. So I look forward to share some insights and views with members of the chamber and other people who've joined the webinar. So if I think about the environment we find ourselves in, it's an environment of uncertainty. So many people find themselves in a world where they don't know what tomorrow looks like. They have no idea how to cope with today, and they yearn for yesterday. And what I thought we could do today is to talk about some key themes about how we should be thinking about COVID. I don't have all of the answers. All I can share with you are some insights that I've seen from throughout the world, in the boards that I sit in the data that we see with our clients throughout the world, across the continent, and so on. So the key themes I want to talk about today include, firstly, a sense of the impact, both locally, across the continent, and globally, of COVID-19 on the economy and businesses. 2, I want to talk about how businesses can respond to this health, economic, and social crisis that we all face. The third thing I probably want to talk about is how do we lead through this turbulence as leaders. The fourth thing I want to talk about is digital disruption and what it means for us and our businesses. And I want to end with my optimism. Why do I still have optimism in times like this? Where does that optimism come from? And what are the things that give me optimism? So those are the 5 themes I want to journey with you on this morning. So if we start with the impact, Nothing like this has happened in the world, because this is a social, economic, and health crisis all combined in one that affects the entire world. What has driven the world for the last 20 years or so is interconnectedness of people, of computers, of countries, of economies. But what this virus has done is forcing all of us to retreat back to ourselves, either our own little countries, or our own little homes, or our own families, or our businesses, because it precludes us from interacting with others. So, listening to the IMF over the last few days and the assessment of some of the things that have happened, focusing on Africa in particular, a number of things come through. The first one is that Africa has not seen the worst of the epidemic. We pray that we don't see the worst of the epidemic because of the kind of challenges that we have as a continent. So we have not seen the devastation that we've seen in Russia, Brazil, and the United States, and China, and other places. So we haven't seen this, but it doesn't mean that it may not come. Secondly, all of us are working on possible scenarios of a recovery. Will it be a U curve, W curve, and all types of curves that you can think of? The reality is that all of us don't really know, because it is the virus that determines the pace, but also our responses as individuals, as families, as businesses, as countries to the virus. Those of you who follow rugby would have watched 3 big matches in New Zealand. These matches were attended by thousands of people because New Zealand has earned the right to be normal because of the steps that they've taken, that they can now say they don't have the virus within them. The third issue that we see in the outlook is capital is searching out for new opportunities. Given the challenges that are there in some of the Western world, you're starting to see capital looking for opportunities on the continent. And it's up to us to create an environment for that capital to be invested in our country. Last but not least, companies and countries are looking at different opportunities of their supply chain, because everybody has been caught napping. Because people now are saying, oh my God, I can't develop this, I can't manufacture this, I can't manufacture that. Countries are now looking at their current supply chain and see whether it's adequate for the future. So if I move then to think about how do we look at the countries and how do we look at the spread of COVID-19 across the world, you would see from this graph that a country like Brazil is on an upward trajectory. But scary, South Africa, although still not dramatic, we're also starting to see that upward tick. This is something we have to bear in mind in everything I'm going to be talking about. Because when we yearn for the normal, we must understand that there is no normal, because the virus lives with us and there is no vaccine that's been found, which means we have to do our business, live our lives in an environment where we're living with a virus. So if I think about the economic impact, many companies have indicated that they are losing staff, they are losing business, profitability is an all-time low, the share prices of many companies have been affected, many companies are losing deals that they've got, that the ones that do cross-border. So there's an impact on the economy quite large that affects all of us. So if you think about the impact on businesses, Edgar's closing, Penn Golding saying we'll pay their salaries 30% of our staff, ComAir in a business rescue, Flight Center only operating at 40% of its network, SAB impact because of the ban that was there on alcohol. So businesses across all the spectrum have been affected in more ways than one. So this is the backdrop we have to have in thinking about this. So MasterCard, one of our partners, did a survey of business sentiment throughout South Africa. And almost all companies indicated that their turnover is below the normal range. I see it in my own business. Turnover is down probably 20-30% from last year. Other businesses have had to close. Many businesses are expecting to work with less headcount than they've had before. Some businesses are starting to think about decreased headcount. Others are starting to think about laying off staff. But the most profound statistic for me is the fact that many companies are saying if there can be no turnover for the next 3 months or 1 month, they might close and never come back again. So think about those industries that are still not open in this phase of the lockdown. They will be now going into that 3 months. Some of those businesses may not come back again, depending on the level of support they might get from government, banks, and others. Those businesses might not come back again. So that's the sense we get from the business sentiment. Now, what about the customer trends? What are we seeing from customers? What are we seeing from customer trends throughout the world and across South Africa? One of the first things that you notice is that health and safety is jumping to be one of the first things that people are spending a lot of their monies on. Any slight cough, and everybody is running to the pharmacy or discount to buy medication and all of that. This has got an implication for those businesses that are in that sector. Secondly, ticket sizes. Ticket sizes are starting to be smaller. People are spending less, and they're spending on those things I think that they are necessary than luxuries, on expensive things, or nice to have, because people are not certain of the future. The third key trend is the explosion of digital solutions. You see many of us now working from home. We see people gymming from home. We see people schooling from home. So all of these activities require new solutions, and new players are playing in that space and obviously are getting benefit. Loyalty. We're all for a loyalty shock. All clients will think about cost effectiveness, and they'll think about value, and they'll think about the use of this for safety and health before they use anything. If your environment or your business does not conform to those things, you'll start to see people moving. If your competitor can show better health and so on, they might steal the lead on you. And then the trust deficit. We are battling with a big trust deficit across all of society. Our employees don't trust that we put enough measures in place at work to make sure that they are safe. We as employers sometimes do not have enough trust that our staff who are working at home are working productively enough. Sometimes the landlords are not trusting that the tenants will pay, and so it goes. So we are going to work a lot, all of us, to regain trust, to make sure that business and commerce can operate in a basis of trust. Now, I want to talk about some of the other trends. Online shopping, because shopping is something that people will continue to do. So online shopping is a big thing, and e-commerce is growing at an exponential rate. People are finding other ways to shop. Also, clients are expecting payment holidays. Lots of clients are expecting for payment holidays. Lots of clients are expecting for payment reliefs from their banks, from other people that they owe. That is the reality that we all find ourselves in. Pricing, if you're running a business and you're thinking about pricing, pricing is a big issue. You have to approach your pricing very carefully now, because people are shopping for new and better savings. If I go further into other trends, we're starting to see online entertainment, online schooling, social distancing at restaurants and hotels. When they get open, you will see a very different life of a hotel, a very different life of a restaurant, as we've seen in those countries in Europe, those countries like in China, and those places like in the US where they've opened up in a very different way than they've opened before. Also, retail shops of whatever sort, there's a big focus now on staff and clients. What is the safety of staff and clients? Because if one staff member gets ill, sometimes you have to close the shop in order to fumigate and disinfect the environment. The problem is how many people will trust to go there again? Or if a client is infected in your environment, the reputational damage that comes from that. Travel and tourism is one of those sectors that is really, really hit hard. And my sense is that as it opens, probably longer than other areas, it will take longer for it to open. Let's say it opens September, October, or November, whatever the time frame is. You might start to see more travel and entertainment and holidays in South Africa than overseas, because countries are not opening themselves, or if you're going to a country, you might be asked to quarantine for 14 days, which makes a holiday not worthwhile. And I want to talk about government responses. Now, governments throughout the continent were not having great economies. South Africa is no exception. Our economy was not in great shape as we got into COVID. This does not give our government and many governments across the continent great leeway in terms of the stimulus packages that they can put on the table. We're hearing now that America might go into their third stimulus package. Also, when you think about government, they earn their money through taxes. But now they've given a lot of tax concessions to keep the economy going. And also many businesses that pay tax are also not making enough money, which has an impact on the revenues for government. Also, governments are likely to be getting capital from outside. All governments are going to be attracting capital. So we've got to make ourselves attractive for capital from outside. One of the things that is painful to watch is what South Africans have been in denial about, is inequalities we have in our country. We are but we've kind of hidden that from ourselves. What COVID has done is to expose those inequalities, which now, in the limited well and have, so that you don't have many people sink further into poverty. Governments have to now think about their economic framework. Quantitative easing, people call printing money, to get more money. It's easier done because it also has got unintended consequences such as inflation and so on. Rich countries have been able to have more leeway to do this. So that's the picture I wanted to paint about government. And I want to come to business. And I want to start with corporates and what are the things that we see with large corporates. Many corporates, the first concern is their employees. Their first of the spending time on employees, which ones are healthy, which ones need help, which ones are affected, and so on. And they've also started their supply. What can we do for clients? The next phase about them businesses, unfortunately, is inevitable. A number of businesses, large and small, will rise. Painfully, for many countries include retrenchment, which is tragic given the fact that South Africa needs jobs. But the reality that we face many businesses that are not making a look at their cost base. Safety of their employees and customers is going to be a big issue for many organizations that have opened, because if you are fined by the authorities by not having the right safety protocols, that sets your business back, and people may not want to be in your business. Also, those businesses that have built reserve funds, reserve capital, will now be able to make certain investment and make capital projects, or even buy out some businesses that are in trouble. Let's now look at small businesses. Small businesses are in a more difficult environment because many of them rely on the corporates, because some of them supply services to those corporates, or they rely on retailer customers like me and you. And we're not buying, that impact on their capacity is going. So many of these businesses do not have capital reserves. People do now is that whatever capital is starting to move now for people with capacity, which leaves those small businesses, people are starting to take the surplus and some of their personal assets because of the start to meet them on a monthly basis. And many of our medium and small businesses now look at how can they build their reserves so that they are strong for the way forward. So let's talk about contracts. This is a difficult one because commerce depends on contracts between people, between businesses, between government and people, and so on. So one of the things that we're starting to see is that many companies and many people are starting to look at contracts and say, in this way, I cannot fulfill the obligation according to this contract. And you can continue your business. If I look at now the finances, this part will be very boring for the least financial people, but this is the lifeline of a business. And I'm just highlighting some of the things without going into detail that we have to think about. Firstly, right size for the cost structure. The cost structure must meet the revenues that you're likely to get. Secondly, relook at your capex. Do you need to do that capex now? Is it capex that you can be pushed further? 3, look at your working capital. Are you maximizing on your working capital? When are you paid? When do you pay? All of those things. Receivable, all of that thing in the most minute detail of your business. The fourth one is refocusing your cash flow. Cash is, you have to understand When are you getting money? How are you getting your money? How can you get your money better, and so on. Revenue performance. You have to look at all the activities that give you revenue, sales and marketing, and see which ones are still giving you that revenue performance. If they're not giving you that revenue performance, maybe you need to save those costs. So it's all talking about looking at the details of your business. Capital allocation. Where are you going to invest on? What are you going to invest in for what return? And lastly, you have to do stress testing of your business. What is your liquidity looking like? What are your stress scenarios for your business? What are your funding sources for your business? So these things are very important in your business. So when your finance person comes to you and talk about these things, don't kick them out of the office. Spend time with them, because this is the lifeline of a business. But I go further and think about liquidity and P&L even further. You have to separate between good costs and bad costs. You have to know what are the good costs in your business. Your good costs are those costs that will make you continue, and those are the costs that make you more money and your business invest in those. Bad costs, those drain business without giving you more value in the long run. So things like fancy offices, fancy cars, unnecessary spending, people that are not applying themselves at work, all of these kinds of things have to be looked at. If they're not good costs, do not have them in the business, because it doesn't help. This is not an emotional thing. You have to understand the business itself may not survive. Next, you have to be frugal. You have to make sure that you don't have fancy things, frills, and things you do not need. I got laughed at in my own home when I sold my car a couple of months ago, and I just had my little car, and everybody was laughing at me. Why are you going around in your little car? And I was like, think about it. Every day I drive that car and I park it at the office. The rest of the day, it sits there in the office. But the people who want the car to be paid, they want their money. They don't say, what did I use the car for? Then I travel overseas for a long time. That car is still parked there. And I said, for me, for my purposes, I just need a small car. Now I'm even more happy that I moved to a small car, because now I don't have the problem, given the fact that I'm not using the car and I'm in a different province. Maintain good behavior. As a business, you have to have good relationships, good conversations with all of your stakeholders, your suppliers, your employees, your shareholders. Find middle ground. Find a way of communicating with them, telling them what's going on and the impact that's there. And then you have to be future ready. You can't only focus on the fact that there's a crisis now. You have to be thinking about the future. Somebody is developing a business that's going to take you out of business. If you're not thinking about the future, you may survive the COVID-19, but just immediately afterwards, all of your customers have gone to your competitor, or there's a new solution that takes away what you are offering to clients. So, how do I sum up my advice for small business? What are the survival things that you need to do? 1, focus on managing your cash flow, as I said. 2, boost the productivity of those staff members that are working from home. 3, communicate with your customers. 4, use the free time you have to improve the business. This is not a holiday. You have to be working harder. How is your business going to survive, and how will you make it better? 5, you must go digital where it's possible, because digital is the future. Make use of available small business relief from banks, small business relief from banks, and from from government. Now, if I move on to government, there is 500 billion rands. That is astonishing, $26.3 billion. That's the rescue package that the government has given out. people get shocked by the. As a business person, don't worry about the 500 billion. You have to find aspects of that relief is relevant to my business. And where can I find the and where can I afford? And those range from loan guarantees of about 200 billion, job support 100 billion, tax and payment holiday 70 billion, 50 billion, health intervention 20 billion, municipality support 20 billion. So the key is how to benefit from this for your business. This is important for every business person. In addition to this, the government assistance is also by sector and by area and by need. So you have to understand what those are. If, for an example, you are in the tourism environment, there's a tourism relief fund that's there. If you've got employees, there's a UIF support fund. If you are an SME, there's an SME relief finance scheme. So there are all of these things, but they mean nothing if an entrepreneur or a business person doesn't get to understand. Is it easy to find? No, it's not. It took me a lot to get all of these on one slide, and there are many others. I've just captured a few of those. Then banks are also offering a number of relief packages and options to assist clients. Obviously, Gary and his team will kill me if I talk about support offered by other banks, so I will stick just to Standard Bank so that I'm not fired by Gary and his team. There are relief options for those, for example, who've got merchant POS devices in their shops, where if there's no trading, then they are able to be given a holiday for that. The trade relief for importers. There is term loan support for COVID-19, SME payment relief. So there's all of this detail. Speak to your banker, tell them where you are, what you're trying to do, and let them engage with you in trying to find a solution for your situation. I now want to come to the third theme, which is leading through turbulence. How do we lead our staff? How do we lead our teams and our businesses through this turbulence? The first thing I want to talk about is the psychology of the new abnormal. My professor at Harvard, Professor Rende Kulati, gave us a class 2 weeks ago. And he gave an amazing description of what all of us are going through. On the far left, you have the end, which is what we're experiencing now, which is denial, shock, sadness, uncertainty, and a sense of loss because of COVID-19. Then you have the new abnormal that we are tentatively going through, which is full of stress, anxiety, frustration, impatience. But then we want to get to the new beginning, post-COVID, which is the hope, enthusiasm, high energy, open learning. So you don't just move from the ending to the new beginning. You have to go through this new abnormal, which is not normal. And it's very, very, very fluid. We were hearing already, for example, in China, that had done so much to combat this when it came in Wuhan. But we were hearing that Beijing, for example, has found some new outbreaks, and they're making actions there. So that's why this virus is difficult, because even when you think you've got it well sorted out, there's so much uncertainty because an outbreak comes and it sets you back, which is why sometimes the recovery may not be as smooth as we want. So if you think about your organization, I want you to picture the situation as I've described, the ending, moving into the new abnormal, and then a new beginning. Where is your organization between the two? If your organization now, 4 months into this, is stuck in ending, you have to do something dramatic. With science, at least to the new normal. If your business is abnormal, you have to start to think about the new beginning. Now, I can tell you in my business, I am in the new abnormal. And day out, I'm working on the new. It doesn't mean that some of the elements of the ending do not affect us. They do. If a staff member is affected by COVID-19, we're back to square one. But you have to be thinking about the future. So I want to talk about us as leaders leading through a crisis. I want us to reflect on something as leaders. With our staff, our suppliers, and everybody that we're dealing with, we're in the same storm. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, we're not all in the same boat. Let me repeat. We're in the same COVID storm, but we're not all in the same boat. As a leader, it's very important to have the humility to understand what boat are your people in? What boat are your staff in? What boats are your suppliers in? So that you see the world through their lens. Because maybe in that way, you can be able to help so that they navigate the environment very differently. So when I talk about leading through hope, I wrote this a couple of weeks ago. And I said, as we move into this new environment, which is lockdown, this new lockdown level that we're finding ourselves in, we're slowly rebuilding our lives and our economies. But I was mentioning that we are coexisting with the highly infectious and deadly virus. And there are no therapeutics, no vaccines in sight. We must not pretend that lockdown 4 or lockdown 3 means the virus is gone. The virus is not gone. We are co-living with a deadly and infectious virus. That's a reality. What that means is that we as leaders must be purveyors of hope. We must create that odyssey of hope President Obama describes, so that people can see hope through the difficulty, not false hope. We have to find a way where we can clearly articulate a compelling vision from what we know. We may not know everything, but what we know, we must be able to share with people so that they can find a way. So we've got to safely tiptoe out of this stage of the lockdown into this difficult environment where we're saving both lives and livelihoods. There is this false debate I hear of people talking about saving lives or saving livelihoods. We do both. You have to save lives by making sure that we adhere to the protocols of COVID-19 for health. But you also have to save livelihoods to make businesses to start to operate, but operate in a very safe way. So let me talk about staff that is working at home. Many of our staff members are working at home. It is possible for them to be very productive. I go and I attend what you call board meetings. I have AGMs. I have meetings with colleagues across the African continent, all sitting in my home. That's the reality. I'm productive here. I'm doing reports. I have EXCO meetings. I have one-on-ones. I have appraisals of stuff. That's the reality. I mustn't yearn for the time when I'm going to be in the office, because it's unlikely that I will be back in the office this year because there's no space. Because of social distancing, we've taken all of the spaces and made those staff members that need to be in the office to be in the office. Telecoms and internet providers obviously are smiling to the bank. All of us are running out of data, but that's the world that our staff are living in. Also, parents are working with their children. Online schooling, is a big challenge for all of us. And now tentatively the kids are going back to school. So how can you help your people through this as a leader? First one, stay positive. Even when you are feeling down and things are difficult, you have to project that optimism and that positive mindset, because people look at you for guidance. People look at you for inspiration. Two, you got to create a message of hope. You got to build that message of hope. For 2 months, I used to send 1-minute videos to my staff every day for 2 months, non-stop. And those videos kept my staff going through the most difficult times of the lockdown. You also have to be vulnerable and make an effort to connect. One of the things I loved by President Ramaphosa was when he was battling with the mask. It showed that he was human. He was like us. So let's not take away the opportunity to be vulnerable, because staff will give us a lot of trust when we are vulnerable. Also take care of yourself, your mental health and your physical health. You are not good for us to lead if you are not also healthy. Mental health and physical health. This is very, very important. Let's not underestimate mental health. Mental health is big in our country. It's a big challenge. Then you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan with the team, what you're going to do. So in a crisis environment, if I sum up what I'm asking you to do, you have to prioritize. There are conflicting demands in your business, but you have to prioritize. 2, you have to communicate with all of your stakeholders. 3, you have to manage expectations about what is needed, when is it needed, and what needs to be delivered. Then you have to reimagine your organization. You have to reimagine the future. Reimagine your products and market, reimagine your operations, and reimagine the way you work. It can't be business as usual. You can't be stuck that we're just surviving COVID. You have to look at the future. As I try and get to the end, I want to deal with the digital disruption. Now, many of you know Nokia. When I grew up, to have a Nokia phone, it was everything. You were it. If you had a 9910 or something like that, you were it. But Nokia today is no more. There is no longer a company called Nokia. And when it died or ended its growth, the CEO of Nokia says, we didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. They were overtaken by events. Digitization took hold of them. This is the same thing that happened to Kodak and all other businesses that were great in the past and that died. Now, Mushambi Mutumi describes this thing about digital transformation. He says people know that large-scale disruption is coming. They know it's here, but simply they have no response. Unfortunately, digital transformation cannot be ignored. All of us have to change our companies, change our own mindset to create an environment for the digital world. But change is not easy. I think in the 16th century it was Niccolo Machiavelli had these words to say. It ought to be remembered that there's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, and more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Change is hard, change is difficult. But if your business hasn't changed, your business may be no more. It may be a Nokia of tomorrow. Look at what Uber has done to the travel industry. Look at what Airbnb has done to the hotel industry. So you have to say what disruption will come in your environment and digitize your business. So in the age of digitization, Klaus Schwab says it very nicely. In this new world, it's not the big fish which eats a small fish. It's the fast fish which eats the slow fish. Your business must be the fast fish in this environment. Even if your business is large, it must operate like a young startup. So what are some of these trends which are also opportunities for your business that we can see? I'm just going to mention them and not go into detail. 10 key digital trends and opportunities. Online shopping and robot delivery. Digital and contactless payments. Remote working or working from home. Distance learning or online learning. Telehealth. where you do all of your health through robotics and through apps and things of that sort. Online entertainment, supply chain 4.0, 3D printing, robotics and drones, and 5G communication. All of these will have an impact on our lives and will have an impact on your business. How do you position your business to respond to that? You have a wave of new initiatives that you see. In our world, we've got things like SnapScan, Simply Blue for e-commerce, for small businesses. All of these things are done now to make life easier for entrepreneurs. And there are more innovations that are coming from all banks and all other businesses. There is now fast-track innovation of everything that you can think of. Click and collect. Now you just pay for something and you collect it. Things are delivered in your home. All of these things are happening in our lifetime. Let me conclude. I want to conclude with my optimism for the future. What are the things that I think if we can be focused on, we can find a better future post-COVID? So what is that optimism? The first one is we have an opportunity to transform South Africa's economy to create shared prosperity. We are the most unequal country in the world. We've got a concentrated economy. We have an opportunity to unbundle the economy, to create new opportunities for many other small players to come in, innovate, and bring new competition and new dynamism into our competition. And I think our government, in some of the announcements, are wanting to create that environment post-COVID. We mustn't let this opportunity slide. We must be able to change this environment and create what I call shared prosperity, where more people than less benefit from our economy. We must be more equitable. We can't be a society where there is just such a vast gap between the haves and have-nots. And every one of us have a role to play to make that happen. The second thing is that we need new business model opportunities and thriving entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs thrive in times of crisis. They see new opportunities. They see new ways of doing things. They reinvent their business model to find a way of responding to client needs and new needs that clients may not even know they have. So we must create that environment for that entrepreneurial dynamism that will come into the country. The third one is I have been so pleased to see some amazing public and private partnerships that seek to close the digital divide. I heard the other day some amazing things that Vodacom wants to do in some of the rural areas to create more Wi-Fi in the rural area. Just imagine things like that. What would that do for homeschooling? That would do for bridging the digital divide in rural schools. There are many other things that corporates can do working with government and society to bridge some of the digital divide that we have. We can't leave people behind because of the digital world we're moving into. The fourth thing is new fintechs and innovation. These are springing up everywhere. New fintechs are coming with new ways to solve never before seen challenges. So what does your business have for the new challenges? What do you have planned for what clients will look at? And last but certainly not least, Africa is our home. We drive the growth. I am an optimist on the continent. I have probably worked for the last 15 years to 18 years of my career on the continent. My passion is this wonderful continent of ours. And I wish I can connect more people as Africans to see one another, to understand the value that sits in this continent. And from a business point of view, I think we could go quite far to connect Africans with one another, both from a commerce point of view and interpersonal relationships. So, Nomkita, my leader, as one politician said, after speaking for 3 days. That concludes my opening remarks. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to the conversation with the audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Lincoln. Thank you very, very much for such practical, up-to-date, up-to-the-minute information. This is exactly what we at the Business Chamber wish to be sharing with some of our people that are working with us. I really like when you said about optimism, because I think everybody at this point in time is feeling quite negative and people have lost their optimism. Some of them with good cause, because they don't know what's going to happen to their businesses, to their jobs, etc. And you see by the nature of the questions that we've been receiving, people are concerned and they really are looking for solutions. But I did like it when you said opportunity to transform the South African economy, to create shared prosperity is what this crisis has brought. Because we all know that every crisis has an opportunity, or it brings an opportunity with it. I did like it when you raised the issue very much in the beginning around New Zealand. We have also identified New Zealand as people to talk to. We've actually already reached out to the office of the Prime Minister, Ms. Jacinda Ardern. We've written to her to say, we see what you've done. We would like you to share your learnings with us and share the lessons from COVID, because she's already now opened the economy. So obviously we are beginning to say, how do we reopen the economy and how do we get back to normal? So we're looking to people like that. So one of the next talks that we'll be doing would be to host either herself or someone from her office on these issues. So it was quite interesting that you've already mentioned them as well. I thought the role of government, you've brought it to the fore in terms of what is now, required from governments going forward. But I also liked very much, everybody talks about the new normal, but you spoke about the new abnormal, because actually nothing is normal at this point. So I'm going to open up to questions, and I'd like to take them in threes so that you can give you an opportunity to respond, and then we get back. Maybe we'll take 3 rounds so that we can get to a close. But I also, just before we take the Q&A, I wanted to share with you that we have partnered on this particular webinar with the Herald and the Standard Bank. So we are testing the waters to see how this platform works, because we're wanting to host a much larger, much bigger, and much more platforms going forward, because we want to bring solutions to the members and whoever else is interested in them. So we want to acknowledge all our partners and how the Herald has also come to the party on this one with this great platform that we're talking on. I do want to say that at some point people did lose you, but they didn't lose the sound. They also didn't lose the slides. But I think it's purely because you are calling in from the farm out in the Eastern Cape. So we're going to blame that connection at this point. So we have a question from Lindeka. She'd like to know, if I'm forced to close down my business due to COVID-19 challenges, will the bank ever consider my finance application in the future once the pandemic is over? That's one question. The next question is from Zwandile. He would like to know, the SMMEs who have not operated for the past 3 months, and they, of course, they have 0 turnover and 0 transactions, and the bank is still charging banking fees and thereby leaving their accounts in a minus situation. Why are banks not putting hold on these charges in this period? And he says, I ask this specifically because I bank with Standard Bank. That is Mzwandile. We also have a question from Adele Harris. Adele says, I'm struggling to get assistance due to the lockdown and also the no work, no pay. Who do I speak to before my credit rating is forever destroyed? It seems she's reached out to the bank and she's not getting that help. So I'll pause there and we take the 3 and then we get back to you. Over to you, Lincoln.
Okay. So the first one is that when looking at your situation, Lizeka, they have to look at what industry are you in, because if after these 3 months you are still in an industry that is not allowed to operate, you are still a more higher risk business. So therefore, it depends what industry are you in and what are your potential revenues in the future. It's very important that, when I always describe what a bank is, a bank is all of our money. It's depositors' money. So we have to make an assessment of, if we give Lizeka the money, will we get it back? If we can't get it back, then we shouldn't give Lizeka the money. If we give Lizeka the money and Lizeka is not able to pay us back, everybody says, why could you give Lizeka that money if Lizeka was in an industry that may not recover? So all of those things have to be discussed with your banker. It's difficult for me to give a generic one, but the issue of which industry you are in is very important. The second question is the one about fees. All of the payment holidays that I've given are there to give some relief to entrepreneurs and businesses, whilst the business of the bank also continues. Because remember, the bank itself is a business. So the bank itself has to continue as a business. The same way as I was saying earlier, you are going to get these trust issues. Because let's say the person who's asking the question is battling with all of this, but they also expect their customers to pay them. They expect their suppliers to supply them. It's finding one another in those instances. So what banks have decided was to say, let's forego certain things, but still retain certain things for us to continue to have a business. And fees are an important part of the things that the business we've wanted us to have. Then the third one is, I'd really like the colleague who's battling to get help to either email Gary, Gary Maxon, Gary.Maxon at standardbank.co.za. He's the head of the Standard Bank in the Eastern Cape. If you are battling to get hold of Gary, or you are in another province, you can email me, Lincoln, LINCOLN .Mali, MALR, at standardbank, one word, .co.za. Then we can look at the specific situation.
Thank you, Lincoln. We have another question from Prince. They're saying that our metro is stuck in a dysfunctional state. How do we get them back on the right path? I think it's a broad question. Let me rather allow you to talk to that one before I get to the others.
Yeah, I think this is a time for leaders to stand up and lead. I'm not a politician, so I'm not going to get into the politics of what's happening in the metro. But the point for me is that all leaders have to ask themselves, are they in it for the people or in it for themselves? If they are in it for the people, there are things that need to be done. And the New Zealand example shows you, when there's leadership, things get done. If the metro doesn't have a plan about how it's going to take this crisis, if it doesn't help people, if it doesn't have a plan of how to money that is going to be given for COVID, if it doesn't have a plan of how we're going to make sure they've got equipment, then we're lost. And businesses depend on an environment. So the metro leader is an environment in which businesses need to do and supply the goods and services that they apply. So this is the leadership issue. The leaders in the metro and the people who put them in must hold them accountable.
Thank you. And at some stage you spoke about self-leadership. So how should employees themselves lead themselves in such difficult times? That's another question.
That is very, very important. So let me start with myself. I was never a guy that was very keen on physical activity. I used to say I used to run if somebody was chasing me. But at the start of this lockdown, I decided that my physical and mental health is important. I will do every day by doing activity. I'm going to start some small activity where I'm walking or running or whatever. I don't like running, so I do lots of walk. Last week, I was able to finish 21 Ks walking. all through the things I've been doing all of this time. So each person has to have, what are those things that you have to do for yourself? If you've got a little patch of garden, start a little a vegetable garden there. You know, whatever you have to do that makes sense to you, so that you cannot be affected by the lockdown, mentally and physically. You see me today wearing this shirt and tie. I am very respectful of the chamber, but it's not because I'm speaking to the chamber. Every single day I wake up and wear like this. Everybody in my family laughs at me. You say, you are ridiculous, you're working from home, why are you dressed like this? But for me, psychologically, I want to be exactly the same way I have been when I work. So every time I've got any video call with anybody, the first thing they do is to laugh at me in the way I'm dressed. So each one of us, you have to find those things that give you meaning in your life so that you can lead yourself.
Thank you. And Sia says, how will the 500 billion government funding be financed by government? And how will it be repaid in the light of the sluggish economy and the sovereign downgrades?
I think that the government has made a decision, a very wise one, that says, regardless of the precarious nature of our economy, we needed the stimulus to help to make sure that the economy is not affected in the worst possible way. So some aspects of the 500 can be things that are not really paid for in the short term. So let me take the 200 billion, which is the loan guarantee. The loan guarantee is the banks lend the money to the entrepreneurs. If the entrepreneur is then not able to pay the money, the bank will try and get its money, and as a last resort, it can then get the guarantee. It is not in the interest of the banks nor the government that people default on the money that they're given. It's important that that money comes back because that's money that is needed for other things. So that's thinking that it's also a trade-off for government. Whereas, let me cut some of the US and let me give you some exemptions on debt. It's difficult, but it's giving business and us as individuals a reprieve so that we can continue with our lives. It knows that it is foregoing that it would have got. It's about managing a very difficult situation. So that's what government is.
Akona would like to know, firstly, Akona says, thank you for the session. It indeed raises hope. Considering that a good share of the country's finances have been focused to health-related expenditure, how long do you think it will take to have the funds refocused to a wider range outside the health sector?
I think it's a brilliant observation, Akona. The Minister of Finance spoke, I think, last week, and he made a powerful observation that I think many people really missed. And he said, we are poorer today than we were before, which means we have to now look at our situation with what we have, not what we hope to have or what we think we have, which means we have to work with more limited resources than before. What is likely to come from the next budget, Akona, is that there will be as close as possible to zero-based budgeting. In other words, the government has to try and say, let's forget what we used to spend before. Where should we spend the money and why? And this is a huge opportunity for government to really move resources to the right spaces. And it also means that things like unauthorized expenditure, if you are spending on unauthorized expenditure, clamp down and don't budget for, clamp down on those people that are wasting resources, or there are money sent to particular places, the money is not spent, then don't send to those places. So I think government is working around the clock so that when they come with a new budget, they'll be thinking about those things.
Great. Thank you very, very much, Lincoln. I'd like to give you an opportunity to say, just to close it and say the last few words, and then we can take the meeting to a close. But really, thank you for such an eye-opening discussion.
Thank you so much. I think for me, the one thing that gives me hope as we're moving into Youth Day is the youth of this country. I have been so inspired by dynamic young people that we have across the country who are thinking about things very differently, who are working on crazy innovations and ways of doing things. So I have been inundated by calls to talk to young people on a range of things. If we can invest in our young people, I think that they will come with some solutions that we'd never thought about. And really, let's allow people to create a different economy, a different society, and create a different future for us. And I want again to emphasize, we do not have the current status quo of being the most unequal. All of us, in our small little ways, must make a contribution to create a much more equitable society. We can't say South Africa is wonderful, South Africa is this, when a huge part of our society can't make ends meet. There is a way, collaborating, business, government, society, to find a way of doing this. And I think some of the work being done by the Chamber is quite exemplary in that. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much once again. Firstly, for availing yourself, and secondly, for taking the time to go through this presentation, going globally, nationally, also locally, and being able to give advice to those who need it. And also, I'd like to thank as well our partners, both Standard Bank in the Eastern Cape, because that's who our partner is directly, and of course by extension Standard Bank nationally. But then at the same time, I'd like to thank the Herald, who have partnered with us on this, and this being our very first partnership with the Herald. So you are part of the inaugural partnership with the Herald as well going forward. So we're making a bit of history here, and really we want to acknowledge them for the platform they've created. This is an internal platform that they've created within their group, and we are going to be working with them going forward. And I'd like to thank everybody who has participated, listened, asked questions, and taken part in this talk. And you must know that there will be a lot more coming, because this is the new abnormal, and this is the new way for us to communicate. And I'd like to then lastly thank my team from the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber for putting up and working behind the scenes quite frantically on a lot of things, and to get to the stage where we have got to. I didn't introduce myself properly in the beginning. My name is Nomkhita Moana. I'm the CEO of the Nelson Mandela Bay Business Chamber. Thank you, one, and thank you all. Thanks, Lincoln. Thanks again.